studio now. Columnist at the Times, Hugo Rifkind. Thanks for coming, Hugo. And former advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley. Good to see you both. All right, let's talk about this amendment. I mean, we never really, it seems to me, stop talking about this Rwanda Bill. I can't help thinking it's a just perennial, hardy perennial embarrassment. Every time it's mentioned, all you really think about is the amount of money spent on it, the fact that not a single solitary soul has been dispatched to Rwanda. And yesterday, front page of the Independent newspaper, 6 people were given asylum in this country from Rwanda because of threats to their safety in Rwanda. So the whole thing seems as if it ought to have evaporated long ago and been consigned to the wheelie bin of political history. Yet here it is at the very forefront all over again. So, Hugo, is this any good for the Prime Minister? Is there a possible good outcome of this vote today? Or is this just a continuum of complete embarrassment, humiliation for everyone concerned?
What a load of nonsense is what it is. I thought Robert Jenrick's speech that we saw there was it told you everything you need to know. Right at the end, he said, the law is our servant, not our master.
Yes, what did he mean?
What he meant is we want to break the law. He said what he meant is we want to do something in the House of Commons that breaks the law, that allows us to send people back to Rwanda, that the law, that the courts, the human rights law says we shouldn't send.
And may I just stop to ask, I mean, he hasn't purloined those words from Shakespeare or Milton in Paradise Lost. It's not Andrew Marvell. It's not even Harold Pinter. The Lord is our servant, not the Lord. The law is our servant, not our master.
Also, I mean,
did he just make that up? And A, did he make it up? But B, is it true? Is the law our servant or our master or neither? I'm not quite sure which it is.
Whose servant? We live under the rule of law. So I mean.
So are we the servants of the law? What's he talking about?
I mean,
well, I think he's trying to take back control of making sure that the law in this country, that it's UK law that is sovereign and supersedes any other foreign judge or court ruling,
or domestic judge.
Or there's yes, quite, because the bill will bring, as it currently is, I think, the ability for ministers to be able to override any decision about deportation if an appeal is.
I mean, is there
upheld.
a sense that we feel at the moment aggrieved because we feel as if the law is our master and not our servant, and so a general feeling in the population or in Parliament that we need to kind of rejig the power balance versus law and ourselves so that we can control the law, it doesn't control us? Or is the whole point of law that it's supposed to control and contain and discipline us and stop us indulging in our worst excesses, particularly you two, who need a great deal of control at all times? I'm quite sure of that. But what the heck is he talking about, Charlie? You're giving him some kind of props here, aren't you, for saying something that does make some kind of sense? Do you really think it does?
I think I'm not entirely sure the language that he used would be what I would have used to try and make sense or try and cut through it. But I think it is essentially trying to say that UK law is, it's about taking back control. I think it's effective. If you go back to that 2016 phrase, the UK have voted to leave the EU. The UK want to see deportations take place. Should people that come into this country illegally, should they be deported? That should happen. The idea that anybody is stopping that, whether it's a foreign court or a foreign judge or even a pyjama judge that we were hearing from Peter Cardwell there.
Have you ever heard about the pyjama judge? I've never heard about that before.
I love it. It sounds like a teddy bear's picnic or something.
Well, my father was in the underwear business. We grew up with warehouses full of pyjamas. Any mention or reference to pyjamas, I love it. Takes me straight back home. I mean, but I didn't know about these pyjama judges.
It's going to be a boxer shorts judge these days. Who wears pyjamas? But look, but the point is, that's what this is about. This is a little internal Conservative Party spat over the law. It's not about immigration. That the rest of Jenrick's speech there, when he's talking about immigration, I mean, I say this till I'm blue in the face. Legal net migration last year was 765,000. Illegal crossings over the Channel was 29,000. Yes. The second of those numbers is a lot smaller than the first number. People who are worried about mass migration, as many people are, that 29,000, it doesn't make a difference.
And there's another crucial number here. I mean, there are many. One is the cost of Rwanda so far. The next is the cost of Rwanda should anything ever actually happen and should any planes take off. But the third is, I think, possibly one of the most pertinent and crucial numbers of all, how many migrants of the illegal nature are they ever intending to send to Rwanda on a plane? Is it 50? Is it 500? I mean, whatever the number is, even if it's 5,000, it's an absolutely infinitesimal number, even of the illegal migrants, let alone all the migrants who are coming here, and the number of which causes a great deal of concern. So isn't that one of the crucial numbers? What are they aiming for? Even should this be allowed to happen, should all the legal objections be overruled, should somehow or other, against all the odds, one of the planes take off, how many people are they sending in there anyway?
Well, I think that is the crux of the argument. I think that there was a plane that was set to take off back in 2022,
7 people were on it.
but there were only
Seven people on it.
7 people on it.
Yeah.
But again, I think that was illustrative of the fact that that was stopped by the European Court of Human Rights. So it was a
It's
foreign...
often Geoffrey Robertson, isn't he? Comes galloping in at the last moment and stops it. And he says he's going to carry on.
And so I think we need to see planes take off in order for the policy just to work. That's the only way that it will be defined as working. But I think the numbers of how many people Rwanda can take, I mean, the number I've heard, so many numbers, whether it's 700, 900, whether it's up to a few thousand, but there will be a limit at some stage, or an infinite number, depending on the current sort of deals that you can do with Rwanda. But the reality is, I think what number 10 and what the government and what everybody would hope to see is that when you start to send people to Rwanda, people that have come into this country illegally, that don't have a right to be here, that aren't fleeing prosecution, people who do have a right to be in this country that are fleeing that kind of terror should absolutely be here, but those that are just chancing their arm perhaps should not be. Once you start to see those planes take off, that will be a deterrent, or the hope is that it's a deterrent to stop people coming over.
But then I'm going to say the obvious thing and ask the obvious question, Hugo, that, if we're looking for deterrence, 5 people died
exactly
the day before yesterday. They drowned in the freezing cold, icy, ghastly, inhospitable channel. Isn't that a deterrent? I mean, there's 5 dead people to add to the ghastly and tragic roster of people already dead. I mean, a flight to Rwanda versus 5 people drowning, which of the two is more of a deterrent? And if it's still not going to work, you could get killed on the way, you could drown, you could die, you never get to Britain, you don't get to chance your arm, or indeed have a better life, or work really, really hard and pay tax here and really make a great contribution. You don't get to do any of that because you're dead, because you drowned in the channel. You'd think that would work if there's going to be a deterrent that works, wouldn't you?
Quite. The idea of it being a deterrent is nonsense, particularly as we're not sending anyone there. But again, the point of this policy is not to work. It's not to actually do anything. The point of this policy is so that come the next election, they can stand up there and say to the Labour Party, you're against this. That's it. That's all it's for. It's politics. It's not
and do you
government.
think, Charlie, if they do, if exactly as you say, they say to the Labour Party, you're against this, that the general population, who I hope are listening to and watching this programme this afternoon, will think, oh, that's appalling. The Labour Party opposes this excellent Rwanda plan, which has been such a tremendous feather in the government's cap and which has been such a bargain, and we all think it's tremendous, how awful to oppose it? Or do you think the general public, the voter, might just think, well, good, it's been rubbish, what a terrible plan?
Well, I think the game plan for the Conservatives and the government would be that they hope that the public will see, after a successive of policy failures, successive Home Secretaries that haven't been able to implement this policy, this government has actually been able to get a flight off the ground. Because I think it goes back to that idea of taking back control of your money. Your borders was a key part of that Brexit vote in 2016, particularly for Northern, the Red Wall, who've left Labour because they feel Labour left them. They want to see controls on migration. There's numbers that Hugo rightly referenced. You can talk about
765,000.
Exactly. So, but there is it goes to the heart of fairness in this country. Yes, okay, if you're coming in legally and you could be part of the Ukraine scheme, you could be part of it, you could be a student studying. That's all very well, and everybody is welcome on that front. But if you are coming into the country illegally, and if you are being put up in a hotel at the cost of the taxpayer, that's not fair either.
But I don't think,
and it's not fair on communities. Seeing influxes of people who are just being held. It's not fair on those people being held either.
But it's simply not true to say that the immigration that people object to is the tiny proportion that is illegal that ends up staying in a barge. It's not. The bit of immigration that people object to is the large numbers who come in by completely legal routes and are the 750,000 people who arrived in this country.
And I would say, and particularly, it's only my view, and anybody who wants to object, please do. But I would say very often what people object to is somebody coming in legally and then bringing in a whole lot of relatives and family,
which is also legal in many cases. In almost all cases.
Which is legal, but which lots of people don't like. I think, from what I've heard in all my years of broadcasting, people just don't like it. They don't mind somebody coming in legally, but when they bring their mum and their grandma and their uncle and their children and everybody else who they can legally bring, they're not breaking the law, but people don't like that. They don't like the kind of pile-on of one particular person legally coming. I think that bugs people and bothers people maybe much, much more than people coming on dinghies and possibly drowning on the way when they're worried sick about them drowning more than